Want to get a chance to visit with you about a bill that just passed through the United States Senate, and probably by the time you see this video has already been signed by the president. It's a bill on a topic that we don't talk about very much because, quite frankly, society doesn't like to talk about it. It's criminal justice reform. It's what's happening in our prisons. It's a bill called the First Step Act. The First Step Act takes a look into a place that Americans don't like to look into, our penitentiaries. We typically have someone convicted of a crime, found guilty, and then locked up. And we don't want to think about it anymore from there, rightfully so. We have 180,000 people around that in federal penitentiaries right now. We have over 2 million people total incarcerated in America, both in state and federal penitentiaries. Here's the challenge, though. Of that 180,000 people around that in federal penitentiaries, around 40,000 of those folks will be released in the next year. So they're coming back into society. So the question's not what's happening over there. It's what's happening to those 40,000 people when they come back into society out of the federal prison. Statistics show that around 20,000 of those 40,000 people will be rearrested at some time. And 10,000 of those folks will actually be reconvicted and reincarcerated. So the 40,000 people released this year, we can expect around 10,000 of those folks to end up right back in prison because they've committed and been convicted again of another crime. We as Americans should talk about what happens in the prison, because it does affect us when those individuals come out of prison and come back to the street. So the question is, are we locking people up and warehousing them and holding them? Or are we trying to give incentives to them to be able to turn their life around? The First Step Act tries to answer that question by saying we want to give opportunities for people that choose to in prison to be able to have some incentives to turn their life around. If they don't want to, they just want to stay in prison, they can just stay in prison and stay separate from society. But if they want to be able to engage and to be able to turn their life around, here's some incentives. So it really breaks down into two categories. One category is those medium and high risk individuals. These are folks that are guilty of sexual offenses or assault or drug trafficking of fentanyl and heroin. These are folks with firearm offenses, carjacking, all violent offenses in that type of sense. Those individuals are given the opportunity to earn the way to be able to get more commissary time. That's basically a convenience store in prison, or to earn more time to be able to get on the phone. It's an incentive to say, if you'll act better in prison, if you'll go to some training times, if you'll go to job skills training, if you'll go to some classes, if you'll get an education, if you'll go to faith-based groups, if you'll do some of these things to improve yourself, you'll get the option to get more commissary time or to get more phone time. For folks that are low or minimal risk individuals, these are not individuals with violent pasts or the violent convictions or sexual assaults and all those. These are folks with low risk crimes that have been cooperative in prison as well. Those individuals get the opportunity, if they go through job training or they go through faith-based training, they go to different educational programs that we can set up. If they do all those things to better themselves, they earn time to not be in prison serving their time, but they earn time to serve their time in like a halfway house or in a community detention program, still under the supervision of the Bureau of Prisons, but to get out of the main prison and to be able to go into a less restrictive environment. Now, they still have to serve their full sentence, but they earn time with a little bit of flexibility at the end. It's basically a carrot that's hanging out there to say, if you'll start turning your life around, if you'll develop some habits that will help you outside of prison, will help you transition halfway, a little bit earlier, but you still got to be able to fully serve your full sentence. The whole goal of this is, what do we do with those 40,000 individuals coming out of prison each year to be able to help them reintegrate? We shouldn't ignore it. We should find a way to be able to push down recidivism, and we should find opportunities for them to turn around. This bill's been 8 years in the making. It's had lots of debate. It's had lots of changes. There's been a lot of input from law enforcement groups and outside groups and victims' rights groups from all over the country. In fact, for the last 2 years, President Trump and his team has worked very hard to be able to engage on this topic because the president wants this bill to pass, and they've worked through different ideas on it as well. Now it's passed the Senate 87-12. That is an overwhelming bipartisan vote, with groups from all over the country looking at the bill and examining and saying this is the best way to provide some incentives to have some life turnaround in prison rather than just warehouse those individuals. But it includes a lot more than that as well. It also deals with some things like something that should have been fixed 10 years ago. It's the issue of crack cocaine and powder cocaine. Congress voted to say that crack and powder cocaine are the same, but they left some folks in prison and never went back to be able to reevaluate that with the crack cocaine convictions. This goes back and re-examines that and allows them to get before a judge again to be able to find out What would their sentence be, and do they need to have the opportunity to have a balanced sentence, whether you did crack cocaine or powder cocaine? That may not seem like a big deal, but our laws treated those differently. They shouldn't treat those two separately. They should treat them the same. This also deals with things like faith-based groups. There's been a big challenge in the Bureau of Prisons for federal prisons that they don't allow most faith-based groups to be able to come in and actually do recidivism work. Our state penitentiaries do all over the country, and there have been exceptionally successful programs on fighting off recidivism in our state prisons, but the federal penitentiaries block that. Well, this stops that. Now, faith-based groups and non-faith-based groups that work on recidivism for prisoners will be treated fairly and be treated the same. This also deals with a request from law enforcement. The Bureau of Prison employees have for years asked for the ability to have lock boxes in the prison where they can put their own personal firearms in. They'll drive to their work under risk there because obviously they're recognized as prison employees, and not everyone likes prison employees in the community. So they want to be able to conceal carry on their way to work. But there's not been a way to be able to store their firearm when they got to work. Well, this corrects that. So they can defend themselves on the way to work and on the way home from work as well. And it fulfills a request Bureau of Prison employees have had out there for a very long time, and finally resolves that. This deals with an issue that I've worked on very hard. Not only a religious liberty issue was the amendment that I put in to be able to make sure we corrected that, to make sure faith-based groups are treated the same, but also another amendment I put in dealing with what we call the Mercy Act. I worked on this in a bipartisan bill to be able to deal with juveniles that are in solitary confinement too long. We don't want juveniles in solitary confinement too long unless they're a risk to themselves or to others. We need to be able to make sure they're back with the population or a limited population. So it's something we corrected in this bill. We also dealt with things like prisoners that are pregnant, making sure they've got greater access to medical care and a greater ability to be able to get care while they're there. All these are common sense issues that we worked on in the First Step Act. This and a whole lot more we can give you great details on. If you want to be able to call our office, we'll talk you through it to be able to make sure you get the information and you actually get it right. We have a lot of folks that have contacted our office with a lot of questions because they hear rumors on the internet of all kinds of crazy things of what this bill is. Why don't you call us and actually get the facts? This is not an early release bill. This is not letting people out. This is not the jailbreak bill. I've heard all kinds of rumors. Why don't you call us and we'll get the details to you directly. 202-224-5754. That's our Washington, D.C. office, or you can go online at lankford.senate.gov, and you can get all of our numbers for any of our offices, and you can talk to any of our staff about it, or you can go online. We've got a fact sheet on our website as well that'll give you all the critical issues to be related to that. We want those prisoners that are coming out of prison, that are coming anyway, to be able to have the best opportunity for rehabilitation. The way to do that is to get them job training, is to give them great skills training, social training, and quite frankly, one other thing, to connect with their families. If you're in a federal penitentiary, you could be serving in that pen anywhere all over the country. In a state penitentiary, you're usually fairly close to your family and they can drive and connect to you, but not so in federal penitentiaries. This incentivizes individuals to be closer to their families so that their families can visit them and say, I'm looking forward to you getting out and going straight so you don't do this again. That again has been found to be able to help with recidivism. Let's do what we can in just common sense things, simple things, to be able to deal with those prisoners in our prisons. We as Americans provide great dignity to everybody. The victims of crime, absolutely. The law enforcement on the street helping protect us, absolutely. But we also do something unique in our culture. We also show respect even to those people that are incarcerated and treat them with dignity. Obviously in restricted status because of what they've done to society, but we want to see their life turn around if they choose to actually engage in a way to turn it around. Let's give them that option. That's the First Step Act. Again, contact us if we can help provide any other questions for you. God bless you, and thanks if we can help you in any way.